space. How much of it have we actually explored? What do we know about other planets? Is it possible that extraterrestrial visitors have come to Earth and left their mark? What have we achieved through our own space exploration efforts? And how about technology? How far has our scientific research come? Have we reached the limit of our scientific breakthroughs, or is it possible to go even further? And if we did, what would be the consequences? If the secret space program does exist, why is it hidden from the public? What formed as a result of trying to hide and conceal all this information about the secret space program? And who or which groups were directly involved? Also, is there an alien technology being used against regular citizens throughout the world unknowingly?
On the private surface, there's an incredible amount of information, so many dots to connect to show that in fact there's some amazingly advanced technologies that groups and corporations, more like quasi-government corporate groups, have had these technologies for a long, long time.
I think it is absolutely ridiculous that we are dealing with the same design for an airplane that was out in the 1960s and we're still flying in it today. Meanwhile, the computer chip in your phone is more advanced than the computer chip in the plane any day of the week. It doesn't make any sense. They have this technology, they're holding this technology back. A lot of it has to do with money. It's just unnecessary. I'm not necessarily a big advocate that humans should have an enormous amount of technology, as I stated before, just because I think we would be sloppy with it. But it is actually really ridiculous that a lot of technology that could help is being held back. Certain technologies that could heal people, that could help people advance, either their bodies or even spiritually, is being held back. And I do think that we're owed to know what is out there if it can help.
So what I understand about the secret space programs, there's a lot of bartering going on, a lot of mining, and a lot of different technological exchanges. And with the amount of different agendas that there are, in the higher levels of the secret space programs, they don't need currency. It's all more about barter and enslavement.
Well, really, there's kind of two sides to this. On one side, maybe we're not capable, more like morality-wise, of even handling this kind of technology. Honestly, I can't see us, like our society today, having that kind of power. People just kind of do all kinds of things that they probably shouldn't be doing. There's that old saying, which a lot of people thought originated from Spider-Man, but actually it comes from the Bible. And with great power comes great responsibility. So in some aspect, I can understand why this technology is being suppressed. Now, there's a whole other side to this, which is there is this evil, I guess you could say this evil faction that does want to control and suppress a lot of people and use this technology against us. Now, the question is, who exactly is this evil faction?
Is there really a group of people who are actively suppressing this alien technology? And if so, then who are these people? And when did this start happening? At what point did it reach the United States? To answer this, we'll need to go back to post-World War II.
And then in 1997, on the 50-year anniversary of Roswell, a new whistleblower came forward, Colonel Philip Corso. And Colonel Philip Corso confirmed everything that I had already been hearing about for the last 4 years and had told many, many witnesses about. I'd already written about it in my private journals as well. I couldn't believe it when this insider came forward, and he even had the same things: infrared, night vision, LED lights, computer chips, fiber optics. It was unbelievable how similar it was. So with that in mind, we have to understand that the technology that we know and love today, such as the internet, our smartphones, it's all derived from extraterrestrial technology that did not originate on Earth at all, but was given to us ultimately for a particular purpose. However, what most people, again, are not aware of is that the technology that we got our hands on also included things like anti-gravity, actual time travel capability, and warp drive, where you can travel faster than the speed of light through traversable wormholes.
Alien technology was something that really was profoundly difficult to fathom by government scientists and engineers in the 1940s, when in the United States the first spacecraft, extraterrestrial spacecraft, were retrieved. These were technologies that employed systems that sometimes fused consciousness into the technology. And so it was very difficult for the US military and national security officials to kind of like understand how these technologies work. So it took them many decades to understand how the technologies worked. They had help. They had help from German paperclip scientists that were familiar with the German program that had been established in Antarctica, utilizing some of these secret space programs. They also had help from extraterrestrials as well. There were extraterrestrials that became allies to the US, where agreements were signed, and tried to help them develop some of these technologies.
As the European war moved into its final weeks, the American army had advanced close to these prizes. But under the agreement for occupation of Germany, the United States would have to turn all this territory over to the Red Army. The American officer on the spot was Major General Holger N. Toptoy, then a colonel in charge of Ordnance Technical Intelligence in Europe, and now commanding general of the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland. You had to act fast, General Toptoy. What did you do?
Our intelligence sources had told us of the role Dr. von Braun and his Army Superior, General Dornberger, had played in the development of the V-2 program. I believe that the brains of these men, if we could find them, must be put to work on behalf of the United States. After all, they were the world's only experienced missile team. I later cabled Washington and requested authorities to search for and bring 300 of the leading German rocket scientists to the United States. I found I was championing a very unpopular idea. So before long, I was in the Pentagon pleading the case in person. I finally succeeded in gaining approval, not for the 300 German scientists which I had requested, but for only 100. This was the beginning of Operation Paperclip.
Operation Paperclip. It was approved by President Truman in 1946 in an effort to recruit top Nazi scientists before the Russians had a chance to act. In the end, the United States recruited over 1,600 Nazi scientists, many of which were war criminals committed to unpardonable crimes such as genocide. The CIA and FBI secretly sheltered many of their names from the public out of fear of public outcry.
Now, when people hear about Operation Paperclip, a lot of people in the mainstream society who maybe don't know our true history dismissed it as purely a conspiracy theory. But honestly, this was a real operation in which hundreds of former Nazi scientists were recruited by the CIA. And through this operation, you have like the birth of NASA was pretty much formed. It was literally created by former Nazi scientists. The first rocket they built was the Saturn V launch vehicle, which was instrumental in the Apollo moon landings. Now, the question is this why the secret space program truly came about? Now, sadly, This is all left out when we are being taught our own history in school. They definitely don't teach about Operation Paperclip.
And of course, what they were working on didn't stop at NASA. Nope. These former Nazi scientists eventually got incorporated into other jobs throughout our society, such as banking, teaching, industry leaders, aerospace design, the list goes on. Many of these scientists were known to have committed horrendous war crimes, like experimenting on live humans with biological weapons, but very few were actually prosecuted. This went on up until about 1990, and some say behind the scenes, these former Nazis are controlling many things in our government, which sounds kind of like Hydra in Captain America: Winter Soldier. Many say that when NASA was first created, it was only a public cover for the real space program, which was operating secretly behind closed doors. Yo, you guys, have you seen what's new on edgeofwonder.tv lately?
We couldn't wait to tell you all about the new awesome content.
Ben could hardly sleep all night, he was so excited.
We want to make edgeofwonder.tv the place to get the best truth content out there.
So what better way than to use our platform to provide a home for other content creators who want to change the future and help people wake up.
We will now host exclusive new series like Ascension Teachings with Peter Maxwell Slattery to discover your spiritual potential.
Worlds Within with Simon Esler, delving into modern-day warfare of the mind.
And The Human Experience with Deanne Adamson, whose mission is to help people heal from addictions.
And we're just getting started.
You got that right. Our mission has always been to help people think for themselves and know the truth.
To be in charge of their hearts and their minds and to choose a future of positivity and compassion.
So subscribe now and don't miss a single episode and become truly awake.
And we'll see you out on the edge.
And it's very important to touch on the idea here of compartmentalization. People might ask, well, how the heck are these secret space programs kept so secret if they're, so much money goes into them and the technologies are so incredible and they've gone on for so long? Well, when you have compartmentalization, in other words, this scientist in this cubicle has no clue what this scientist or this researcher is working on right next to him or right down the hall, right? And when you're working on these particular projects, you're just working on one tiny piece of it. So you could be working on a tiny little section of this part of the craft or the engine or the cockpit or whatever the case. These scientists might think they're working on a part for the International Space Station. They could have no idea that they're actually working on a part for a secret anti-gravity craft that's going to be built, With compartmentalization, you could have thousands and thousands of people working on this one craft, but you could only have, maybe 3 or 4 that know the big picture of how it's gonna end up as the end result. Great example is the Manhattan Project. We had tens of thousands, if not 100,000 different people working on the nuclear bomb. None of them had any idea what they were actually working on until the first nuclear bomb was dropped. So compartmentalization is key to understand how these are kept secret. There's so much money that's gone on to them. This technology is just absolutely mind-blowing, and it's very much real.
So in the summer of 1947, the National Security Act was signed, which basically is the birth of the NSA, by President Truman. And like I said before, you have the CIA and the Majestic 12, which were all formed in the same summer that Roswell happened. So here we have former Nazi scientists now heading many areas of our own country and literally hiding this from the public. But what people don't know is that there is a lot of UFO crashes between, around like 1947 to 1952. And one of them in particular was even bigger than Roswell, but not many people talk about that one. Now, Truman needed to have a secret group that could operate outside of Washington. And from my understanding, really, this is how Majestic 12 came to be. A group that could bring in this alien technology and study it without being bothered by anyone.
In the past, the advancement of technology was always thought to be a positive force in the development of our society. With the emergence of more convenient and technologically advanced ideas such as wireless communication, smartphones, portable TV, or round-the-clock tracking software, Who could deny that technology could do anything other than improve our lives? But is there more to what can be on the surface? Could there be a more sinister reason for developing this technology? And is it possible that this tech could be used to harm people? And if so, what would be the reason?
I first started to notice the targeting in 2012 during a divorce that was starting to happen between me and my ex-husband, well, now ex-husband, and that's when I first noticed the targeting.
Targeted individuals, or simply TI. Who are they? How have they been targeted? And for what reason? Could technology be used for a darker agenda that's set in place to target humankind?
A targeted individual, or a TI, is a person who's been targeted for individualized harassment. In other words, they're someone who has unwittingly been placed into an extensive program to manipulate and control them. The ultimate goal being to ruin their life. Now, the common denominator is typically someone who has gotten on the wrong side of a government institution or powerful person. At base level, a targeted individual has become an enemy of the state. To a certain degree, every one of us is a targeted individual.
I think the motive of my targeting had to do with a revenge or a hate crime. My ex-husband, he's kind of a powerful person, and he had told me, when we decided we were going to get a divorce, and he had said, "You have no idea what I'm capable of." And when he said that to me, I'm like, yeah, everybody says that, you're just angry. But he was right. I had no idea what he was capable of. My ex-husband works in the aerospace industry, and his company is contracted by the Department of Defense. There was multiple people involved in this targeting. I had got poisoned a year and a half ago.
What are the effects of being targeted by certain technologies, and in what ways does it affect the human body?
Within the targeted individual world, you also have a lot to do with energy weapons, with non-lethal weapons, they call them, that are meant to instill thoughts or fears inside of you. Now, as a remote viewer, you can feel this happening to you, but there was other occasions when they were remote influencing us that it felt like they were directing energy weapons at us. For instance, you would begin to feel this very intense, dark, horrible, death is imminent at any moment, start to flood through your body, and you could not stop it. It was like being hit with an extremely high-powered electromagnetic pulse.
And I had like shooting pains in my lymph nodes, my neck right here and under my armpits. And I knew that, he had poisoned me, and I didn't know the reason why that was done. So I knew that there was something, that was put in my body. I just didn't understand what it was, and I've always wanted to know. But at this time, when he did this, I had knew a bunch of experts because I've been, helping other targeted individuals. So I contacted a doctor who is a toxicologist, and she's an expert in nanotechnology. And when I talked to her, she had told me, send me a piece, your hair follicle, and I'll test it for you. And I sent it over to her. It took about 3 weeks until I got the test results back. And she said I had tested positive for nanotechnology and gamma radiation and about 5 or 6 other drugs. Let me explain a little bit about the semiconductors. They're not actual chips like you would see in the movies. These are made with your own material. They're along with nanotechnology. It takes part of your own material and builds it, and it kind of looks like just like a piece of meat like from your flesh, not your skin, but your flesh, like, and it has all these wires, these gray wires that are coming out of it that I guess connects with the nervous system. And the places that I do have the semiconductors, it kind of flutters or like pulsates, and just like mostly the one on my foot, that one pulses the most. Another part of the technology was they were pulling my consciousness out of my body, and which is very scary when that's happening, because that doesn't happen to me anymore. And also it feels like when you're being hit with these directed energy weapons, it feels like it's like a blast to the head, where it's like pressure and heated, and it comes in through here, and sometimes it'll exit out to this side of the brain, and you can feel tingling, and like your brain is actually moving. And it's very disturbing. It does interfere with my thought process, and sometimes I'm not able to speak correctly, where I'll be stuttering. I know the thought that I have in my mind, but it doesn't want to come out of my mouth.
And being a targeted individual basically means that the ones doing it want you to know that, well, you're targeted. You know, the whole intent of this is to completely ruin your life. And the methods are geared to sound so insane to regular people that they think you're a paranoid schizophrenic. And this is a huge part of the isolation tactic that they use.
Another part of the technology was electric shocks on the body, where they will electrocute you. And also when you're being hit with these weapons, you can feel it. Like you're walking and you can start feeling the ground vibrating, but it's actually you vibrating. It feels like it's vibrating, and it feels like kind of like a wave of energy coming at you, and it's not nice energy. It's very intrusive. And then that's when they're able to speak to your thoughts and respond to your thoughts, and they're not nice. When they talk to you, they're not always nice. You know, they do play the good cop, the bad cop. Like even today, right now, they're trying to convince me that they're helping me, that they arranged all of this, and you know, and it messes with your mind, your thought. Like you don't know what's real.